Hi everyone, welcome to this continuation of Christmas Sparkle. So in the previous obviously episodes, we did two parts for the beautiful red amaryllis, and then we moved on to two parts of the French tulip and paper whites. And now we're going to be doing some foliage to complement those. Now we're going to be making some tulip leaves, but we're going to make those actually formed into a bow. As a floral designer, I've used foliage to actually make bow loops, and this is very nice in a sort of especially a Christmas arrangement. So we're actually going to make sort of two loops and two tails out of tulip leaves. And then we're going to be moving on to some English boxwood. So that is obviously covered in book 3, and that's from the wedding foliage mold. And then we're going to go on to make some spruce, which is obviously covered in book 4. And so we're going to use those three foliages to obviously complement the flowers we made in the first 4 parts. Now this is 2 parts, so we're going to today, first part, we're going to be obviously making the first components of the leaves. I'm going to start off with the tulips, and then we're going to move on to the boxwood and then the spruce. And in the second part, we'll obviously color them and finish them off. And then the last part is going to be a single episode, which is going to be the assembly into the cube container. So let's get started. So the first component we're going to make is going to be a tulip leaf bow. Now this is going to be made with 2 loops and 2 tails to look like if you took 4 tulip leaves and actually made them and wired them and taped them, how you can make a bow. And this is a really nice way to emulate obviously a bow, but using foliage. It gives a nice sort of organic feel to it. So the components, which I haven't put together yet, which will be in the second part. So we're going to be making the 2 tails, all right? And then we're going to be making the 2 bow loops. And so in your directions, we're going to be following. I'm going to make the tails first because these are a little bit easier than actually the loops. And so these are going to be the tails. Now in checklists, we have 40 grams or a number 15 size of foliage green, flexi paste, or obviously you can match the color just using some like moss green, a little bit of orange. And in air drying clay, you just make 4 batches of lime green and then add the orange as explained in obviously the original download we have for the club. So we take, this is the tail, so we're going to be making 2 of these. So we're going to take a number 12 small, all right? So there's going to be a number 12 that just goes through the hole. I'm just going to condition this. Now once you've conditioned this, we're going to roll it into a sausage. And so just going to roll it into sort of a short sausage. All right, you can put a little cornstarch down, or obviously you can work on a little mat as well. And then we're going to make this 4 centimeters wide, all right? So you just want to sort of roll it, so make it approximately 4 centimeters wide. It's going to be easier to use a regular ruler here. So you just want to make it about 4 centimeters wide, not really much wider than that. All right, so wants to be 4 centimeters wide, and obviously wants to be sort of fairly even. Now, if you are doing this in air drying clay, you will need to put this into a plastic folder. Now, especially when we make the actual bow loop, we're going to be making this will be longer. So usually when I use a plastic folder, I often use a shorter folder. Like this type of one, but this is not going to be long enough, all right, because of especially for when we make the main bow. So this is just a regular like page protector. I've used an envelope style page protector. So you just will put your paste in there, and then when you feed it through the pasta machine, this is going to be fed through the pasta machine. Obviously for paste, we're going to just make sure it's not sticky. Remember, if you have any little air bubbles on there, you can use an acupuncture needle if you need to. That will get rid of the air bubbles. And we're going to go through now the pasta machine on number 5. So now we've gone through the pasta machine on number 5. So go through on number 3 and number 5. And again, if there are any little air bubbles, just go in there with your acupuncture needle. All right, and so then what we're going to do is we're going to place that in either your Stay Fresh folder. All right, so you can just place that into your Stay Fresh folder, or you can place this into a, obviously if you've done air drying clay, you can just leave it in the folder it's in, or obviously transfer a sugar one into this as well. So either basically a sort of a plastic flap, or obviously the Stay Fresh folder. And what we're then going to do is we're going to take half length 22 gauge white wire. All right, so we've got two half length in your checklist. These are 22 gauge wires. And what we're going to do is we're going to measure 7 centimeters. All right, so you're going to measure 7 centimeters using a marker on here. So the wire wants to be 7 centimeters long. So just make a little mark on there. Just use and this is where often I use white wire. In your checklist it says white or green, but it's actually easier to use white wire because it's easier to show up on here. All right, so this is going to be your wire. And then we're going to do, once we've done that, we're going to take both ends and cut square. So you can take it out of the flap here. And you can use your cutting wheel, or you can use like a pair of scissors, or you can use just here. We're going to use a mini palette knife. All right. And then especially when you're working in classic paste, classic gum paste or flower paste, I would suggest keep this in the flap. Obviously, it's not so air sensitive with air drying clay or with your flexi paste. But anyway, so you're going to do that. We're going to cut both ends square and brush glue over the half of the paste. All right. So then what we're going to do is going to use some glue or flexi glue. Now remember, air drying clay will laminate to itself. But the thing is that it's usually best to use a little bit of PVA glue even on the, as I said, the air drying clay. So you're going to do that about half of the piece here, okay? And then we're going to take the wire. So we're going to place the wire here, all right? So that's going to be at the 7 centimeter mark. And then you're just going to fold this over until you bring the two straight parts together, all right? And then what we're going to do here, we're going to obviously laminate those. It's very much like we made the magnolia, okay? Now, once we've done that, we're going to, so then we're going to fold over and mark the wire where the wire center is with a needle tool of your companion tool, all right? So here, what I'm going to do is just going to mark, so just where your wire is, just going to make a little mark on this end. So I've just got a little line on here, a little tiny dot. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 1.5 centimeters from the middle here is 1.5 centimeters, and obviously then 3 here. All right, and then we will do the same at the top where the wire is. So you can come in just a little tiny bit. So what we're doing, because we're going to cut this into a 3-inch wide strip, okay? So then you're going to put your, and then with your cutting wheel, I'm going to cut this. So you just cut on the lines, here. And of course, once you've seen this technique, you can make these smaller, narrower, thinner, or also different lengths as well, okay? Now, next step is going to be, once we've done that, then we trim the end to 10 centimeters long, okay? So here, we're going to make this about 10 centimeters, all right, which should be about where you have, but it depends exactly how, obviously, when you make this, how long your sausage. And remember, don't make it really much more than 4 centimeters long, because if not, it won't be long enough, but about 10 centimeters in length, all right? But it doesn't matter if it's 9.5, but obviously whatever you do, just do both of them the same, okay? Now, once we've got that done, we're going to take the, you thin the side using your finger, so you need to do that in your plastic flap. Okay, so you're just going to thin the edge. It's a bit like we do for a calorie. So we're going to thin that. And then we're going to lay on tip of calorie spathe mat, so the wire is at the top, lay flat side down. So we're going to use the calorie tulip leaf veiner. Now we're going to do this on the tip, and we want to have the wire. Now this is obviously the side that's got the wire more visible. You see that side is completely flat. All right, so the flat side goes down, and you just position it like this. So you see it sits right at the tip. So this is the top. And then what we're going to do is going to use your cosmetic wedge or sponge, and you're working each side of the wire. Okay, so don't press where the wire is, but you see that gives you your obviously piece here. Now also, of course, other things that could vary if you were using this, it was a shallower container, if you're not going to use the 10 centimeter or 10 centimeter cube, if you're using something a little shallower, you of course could make the loops a little smaller. So, and of course you could adjust the wire length. I did 7 centimeters and approximately 10 centimeters long, but you could do 5 or 6 centimeter length wire, and then obviously you could have this, could be 8 or 9. So we're going to create that part here. All right, then once we've done that, we're going to press around with the cosmetic sponge, and then we're going to trim this with scissors. So we're going to take that off. Now you can see you've got your leaf, and you can see how the lines are following the sort of the shape here. So we're going to use your scissors. So I'm going to take my scissors here, and I'm sort of following the lines. So you're sort of following the curve. You see if I'm sort of following the curve here. So you see it's approximately, we're starting this about halfway down. You're just going to start to trim that. And then you can come almost to the top. You see it's just a little tiny bit obviously visible each side. Just make sure that because we're making the actual loop here. All right. So once you've done that, so we're going to nearly meet the wire, and then you're going to just pinch that. So you're just going to pinch that where that mark is, all right? And then we're going to, at the bottom, mark the middle, and then mark in 2 centimeters and cut with a knife or scissors. So what I'm going to do is going to do that on the back. Again, I'm going to mark in the middle. So remember, this is obviously 3 centimeters, just a little tiny bit more than 3 now because we thinned out the edge, but just mark it at the here. And then I'm going to go in 2 centimeters into the middle. So just make a little mark there. And then with scissors or a knife, we're going to cut French cuts. So this is in ribbon, when we cut this V shape like that is called a French cut. Okay, and that will be, so you can see you have quite a bit of paste left over each time, all right? Now once we have done that, we're going to, so then we're going to hollow the base of the leaf. So we're going to use our companion tool. So just going to, with the companion tool, hollow the base of the leaf like this around the companion tool, all right? Now, if your wire, if it feels like the wire is going to come out a little bit, just press that in with your companion tool. It will just disappear back into there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just bend the wire just gently. So you hold, you see with my thumb and first finger, I'm just bending the wire just a little tiny bit so that the wire will actually sort of, as you can see, will curve. And then you're just going to sort of pinch it like a taco shape. So you get that like almost like a sort of a taco shape there. You can give a little bit of curve to this. Now with your air drying clay in that, you can obviously just let it dry for a couple of minutes, and you can just curl the ends there a little tiny bit. And then we're going to take a pair of pliers and just going to bend it. And then you want to sort of hang it on a suitable hanger, you know, something that's, so we're just going to hang that on there. So that will dry. And again, you could of course put this in your food dehydrator. Okay, so that will give you your the leaf. All right, so the leaf will just sort of hang like this, and that is how you will make the 2 tails. All right, so they're going to be obviously we hang them upside down like this, so you see how they actually will dry in that shape. All right, and but this is also really nice on, say, a tropical, because, you know, this is a tulip leaf, but you could obviously emulate a tropical leaf. So when you're doing tropical flowers, many flowers, you can use this method for. And but anyway, so you're just going to hang those to dry. So those are the tails, and next we're going to move on to the loops. Now for the tulip leaf bows, we're going to take a number 14 small, so we're a little bit bigger here. Now we're going to roll that into a sausage, and then what we're going to do is actually going to make this 7 centimeters wide, okay? So we're going to just put a little, so we're going to just, this one. Now remember, ultimately you want to just try and keep it sort of fairly square. All right, and then we're going to, as I said, this one wants to be wider because we're going to cut it in half. But you see, it wants to be fairly square. If it's obviously rounded, it's going to, and this wants to be, as I said, about 7 centimeters. So across. Now I'm doing this mostly because if you're working in air drying clay, if not, it's going to get very long and you're not going to have a long enough folder for it. So you see, one wants to be about 7. Again, just go in there with your, you know, in air drying clay, you quite often get like air bubbles in that. All right, so this is, I'm going to, because I've shown in obviously the amaryllis using a pasta machine, I'm going to go through number 3 and number 5 on the pasta machine, and I'll be showing you the next step. Okay, so this is roll through the pasta machine on number 5. We're going to cut that in half, approximately. You don't have to measure it, but just do it by eye. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to cut the ends here square, and so then we're going to cut to 15 centimeters long. All right, so these will be actually 6 inches or 15 centimeters long. All right, so once we've got those, then you can just again, you can put one of these, put these into the flap if you need to. You're read in. All right, then what we're going to do is brush glue over 1/2 and place a full length 22 gauge wire. Now again, remember, this can be white or green. It's just when you're marking on there, it's just often easier to have the marking on the white wire. So what we're going to do is going to take the piece of paste here, and I'm going to brush the glue over the 1/2. Now this is the way I would make bow loops. You know, when I, for example, on a wedding cake, or if you're doing, say, for an air drying clay, a spray of flowers, or a package for a bow, you can make that in this technique, all right? But yeah, what I would normally use if I was doing sugar ones would be for a topper for a cake, I'd use 50-50 paste, you know, normally half gum paste or half flour paste and half sugar paste. Now what we're going to do here is you're going to lay the wire down the middle, all right, like this. So we have approximately the same amount of wire each end. And then you're going to take the other piece of paste, all right, just going to put that on there. And then just going to put that together, all right. So then we're going to, see again, I'm just laminating the 2 side pieces together there. And so that's the first step, all right, and just carefully, and then you can just put that into your light plastic flap if you're reading. So now what we're going to do is you're going to mark 1.5 centimeters, 1.5 centimeters each side of the wire at both ends and cut to make a strip. All right, so here I'm going to then again take my ruler, my companion tool. All right, so I'm going to mark 1.5, 1.5. And at the other end here, I can do 1.5 and 1.5. All right, but remember this width, I've done 3 centimeters as the width, but of course you could change that. So then you're going to just this will be easier with a normal ruler than with your size guide, just because of measuring up. Okay, so we're going to take the ruler here, and then you're going to do the same here. pull away the excess paste. Remember, if you need to, you can use your flexi scraper. Just go just down there just to remove any pieces. So again, that's going to go back into the bag here under the container. And then we're going to take our, now because this is just going to be looped over, you can decide when you make this, when you ultimately finish it off, which side looks the best, all right? So because obviously this veining is not really symmetrical with this part here, it's a little bit wider, so, but you'll see how this works. Whereas on the loop, obviously we paste it here because as you can see, it sort of actually graduates and goes up to the top. So here, you're going to lay this onto the veiner. So you still put it on the top of the veiner. So you see how that's really the top, and then it's directly in the middle of the S on the Katie Sue designs. And again, oh, sorry, forgot to do the, and just thin out the edge. So you just need to thin the edge, which is in the directions. So just thin the edge just a little bit. All right, so that just gives it a slightly thinner edge. And then put it onto the veiner, okay? So you put it onto the veiner. So just line that up with the S on Katie Sue designed. And then you're going to press this on. And then you can just do the other side here. Remember, we're working each side of this. All right, turn it over. Now, you can also do this with a cutting wheel as well. So you can just use your cutting wheel. All right, so what you're going to do is just go to the, so here I'm about 1/3 of the way sort of down. So you see then the next one will just sort of almost just sort of taper it so it just comes to meet. And you're going to do the same on this end. So it's actually like the shape of a canoe or kayak shape. You see? So almost the middle there is the original width, 3 centimeters. And then you'll have the sort of each end is going to taper down slightly. But you can do that with a knife or with your scissors, whichever you prefer and feel more comfortable with. And then you're going to pinch around the bottom. All right, and then you're going to hollow the base, both ends, like this. Now we need to have some half-width floral tape ready to go, and you'll need a pair of pliers here as well, because what we're going to do is we're going to form it into a loop. So have your pliers ready. So as I said, so if you were making this for a wedding cake, not diversing too much, but like let's say you want in bow loops, all you do there is you will cut a strip, let's say 3 centimeters wide or 2 centimeters wide, but what you do is you do it just straight. You can also use a cutting wheel. Companies like FMM have a cutting wheel which will cut a strip, and so you can use a strip cutter as well. So there's different ways of achieving that. But on if it was a classic bow, you'd make it straight, and all you do is you just slightly taper the 2 ends. You almost just cut them at an angle, and you do the same effect. But because the wire is in here, this just gives a lot more body to and it supports this. So all you do now is you're going to fold this over. So you bring your wires to about the same level. And you see then you're just going to bend with your pliers here and here. And you see that will make your bow loop. All right. So, or in this case, a tulip bow loop. And then we take the half-width green floral tape, going to tape around, just slide it up to the bottom. And then you're going to tape all the way down to the base here. You see that gives you Now this one, what we're going to do is a little bit different. We're just going to work around the edge. So you see what I'm actually doing is I'm just bringing the edge up like this. So you almost get that slightly sort of raised part. You can see how the edge is going to be slightly raised. And this looks very attractive for your bows. All right, so you just sort of wrap around there like that. So you see you get that sort of shape. And that will be your how you would make the tulip bows. All right. Now we're going to make 2 of those, and So these will be what they look like. These two are dry. All right, so these will be your tulip bows here, and these are going to just dry in the block ready for part 2. So next we're going to move on to English boxwood. Now English boxwood is one of the 6 foliages that is made in the wedding foliage mold, and obviously this is the little boxwood leaves. Now boxwood is very, very popular. There's many varieties of boxwood, but I grow a lot of English boxwood and I have them in cone shapes, topiary shapes, ball shapes. It's a very, very popular evergreen for Christmas time, and it's going to be perfect in this arrangement. But this is also a really nice leaf to use at any time of year for obviously fillers, for little small sprays, and if you want little tiny leaves you can use this. It's also great to use for craft projects, for like little petit fours and all sorts of things as well, unwired. Now when we make the boxwood, we're going to start off by taking 2, and we're going to make 24 of the larger leaves. So this is what we're going to be making. So 24 of the larger leaves, and these are pretty quick to make as you'll see, and 12 of the smaller. So we're going to measure off your paste. This is the leftover paste from the previous project, from the tulip leaves. So we have, we're going to measure off 2 number 7 small. All right, so you're going to use a number 7 small, so number 7 goes through the hole, so 2 of those. And then a little later in your text, we need a number 6 for the 12 small. And that's just a regular size number 6, so a third below, 2/3 above. All right, so 2 number 7 smalls and 1 number 6. And what we're going to do, we're going to take this is your number 7 small. So we're going to roll this into a sausage and cut it into 12 pieces, and then you're going to obviously repeat it with your second one. And remember, when you're usually doing this, if you have a little silicone mat, you get a little bit of traction on the surface, and you can just use the same technique I showed for the stamens when we did the amaryllis. So just make that sort of an even sausage, and then we're going to cut that. Just make sure the ends on there are sort of fairly even. So we're going to cut this into 12, so you kind of cut it into half, and then you're going to cut it into, and then each of the, remember these techniques that we're using for this is just a quick way when you're making 24, for example, number 3 size, 3 small, this means it just is a little bit quicker to do for production work. And of course, if you had to make 24 number 3 sizes, that would take little time. This is a little bit quicker. All right, and you're going to put those underneath your little pot, and then of course you can repeat with the other 12, and then do those first, the large ones, and then you do the small ones. All right. So what we're going to do is going to take your here. We're going to cut the wires. So in your checklist, these are 6 30 gauge green wires. So just make them level. And we're going to cut each wire into 6. All right. So what you're going to do is cut the wires into half. Okay. And then you're going to cut each half into 3 approximately. You can use like kitchen shears or school scissors here as well. Remember, you can put these on a magnet, which I've used before, to keep them all together. We're going to use 36 leaves in the spray. All right, so those are our wires. Then we're going to, once we've done that, we're going to dip into glue, insert into the ball, and mold into a cone and press into the large cavity. And what we're going to do is with the cavity, we're just going to put a little tiny bit of vegetable fat shortening into here. All right, so you're going to put the large and the small cavity, little tiny bit of vegetable fat in there. Remember, when you finish with them, you're going to then just wash those. All right, so what we're going to do here, I'm going to take the piece of paste. All right, so you make this into a ball, and what you're going to do is dip the wire into glue. Obviously, on your air drying clay, just put that in your needle tip for your PVA glue. So you're going to put the wire, and what I do is actually come out the end with the wire a little tiny bit. And then I'm just going to, with a little bit of cornstarch, make it into a little leaf. So the wire is pretty much right the way to the end. I'll show you this a couple of times. We're then going to just press it into the mold. So you can use your fingers, and then it's often easier on a smaller project like this to use your cosmetic sponge. All right, and just sort of press that in. And don't worry if you see a little bit of the wire, it's not really going to notice. And then here, what we're going to do is going to use your needle tip of the companion tool. So you're going to then just make a line down the middle. So you just make a vein down the middle, and then with you're going to make little lines from the wire coming out. All right, so you're just going to make the little lines on the back there, and then you're going to come out, and all we're going to do is just going to hollow the base of the leaf. All right, so I'll show you that again. So you're just going to make that into a little ball. And I said dip that into the glue. So you just want a little bit of glue on the end. Just come out past the end of the little ball of paste. And then make that into a little cone shape about the size of the cavity. And then again, just put that onto the top here. Just going to press that in. You can just use your finger initially. And then you're going to press that to the edge of the mold. And then remember, on the back of the leaf, you're going to use just your needle tool. You make a line down the back, and then you're going to just make little lines here, little lines here. All right, so that's going to give you like almost like a little miniature leaf. I'm going to take this and then just going to hollow the base around your needle tool, and that will be your little English boxwood leaves. All right, so you just continue with that. It's very, very basic. But you do need quite a lot of them. You know, like obviously you could make, you know, a lot more than this. So depending on how big a spray you want to make, but you're going to just leave the leaves. And what I would suggest you do is, so you don't get confused with because the small and the large is obviously there's not a huge difference in the, is I put, so 24, these are the 24 large, and then I've got 12 small. Okay, so remember the 12 small done exactly the same way. They're made from a number 6 regular size cut into 12, and that will use up to 36 wires. We're going to finish off the foliage by making some spruce. So this is with the winter foliage mold. So we're going to be using the larger and the smaller cavity. And obviously spruce is covered in book 4. And of course, we had the videos available when we launched book, obviously the mold and the book 4. Now, so with the spruce, we're going to, first of all, in your checklist, it's going to cause for, in sugar, a number, this is 25 grams or number 14 of blue spruce color. Now we're going to use the Dusty Miller color. This is going to be the sort of the coloring I've made it, like the color of the Dusty Miller. This is sugar, but this will be the sort of color for obviously with a custom air drying clay. And so that's the sort of what we're working towards. Now remember, we've discussed these before. You can use, like for example, Wilton Juniper Green and then a little bit of blue. You can use obviously sort of an aqua color, a teal color, and then add a little bit of gray to it. So just play around with your colors. And of course, it doesn't have to be exact. And of course, spruce comes in several different colors, but we're going to do this as a slight contrast because obviously the tulip leaf is going to be more of a brightish green. The boxwood is going to have foliage green, and we've got this contrast color. So that's the sort of what we're aiming for in our color for our paste. So number 25 grams or number 14 of that sort of color, matching that color. And in air drying clay, we're going to make 3 formulas of the Dusty Miller color. So you make 3 times, which is in your checklist. So you make 3 batches of the Dusty Miller green to have enough to make the piece. All right. And so we're going to use so we're going to start off with your with the spruce. Okay. Now we're going to measure off. So we're going to make 2 small and 1 large. So we're going to measure off 2 number 8 small. All right, to start off with. So there's going to be a number 8 that goes through the hole, and also you will measure a number 9 small as well for the large spruce. All right, so 2 number 8 smalls, 1 number 9 small, which is in your instructions. And what we're going to do is, again, going to just take a little bit of vegetable fat. I'm going to show you the small one. So put a little bit of that into the cavity. Make sure you just get into there. Remember, this is a stencil brush, so it's sort of it doesn't have too much fat onto there, because if you use a normal paintbrush, it's got little softer bristles, so it absorbs into that. But this is more like an oil painting brush, a stencil brush. So this type of brush is good for that. And remember, you're going to take your paste, and once you've got the paste here, so we're going to So you're going to press into the mold to make it into a sausage shape. All right. So just going to make it into a sausage. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to place it into the mold and then going to just press in. And what I'm doing is I'm just squashing this, just pressing it into the end. Now you're going to have a little bit more paste than you need. All right. And then you can use your scraper. So you can just use a scraper just to take off the excess. All right, so just use like a sawing action to take that off. And then you can, you know, on the videos, you can use the veining tool, but I like the companion tool for this because it's going to give you that really nice feathery edge. So you're just going to work into all of the detail there. So you get that onto the edge. Okay. And then in your checklist, you've got 3 24 gauge wires. These are 24 gauge green wires. And of course, you can do these in advance, get them ready. Green or white wire. You're just going to cover down the wire with your floral tape. This is half width brown floral tape. And then we're going to just sort of make that about 7/8 of the length of the 7/8 of the length of the spruce. And I'm going to just brush some glue onto this. Remember, on the videos you can also use for sugar, you know, if you're doing gum paste or flour paste, you can also use even piping gel there. And then we're going to just thread the wire in. All right, so when we thread the wire in, going to thread the wire into your channel, and then going to just put the wire in. So just sort of put it up towards the top, so it goes about 7/8 of an inch the way in. And you can press in. Flexi scraper is really good for that. All right, so you see, stay within there, flex that. It comes out of the mold. And then remember, you can go in there with your scissors. You can make some additional little cuts in there, so especially at the bottom here. And then you can, some of the parts on the little pieces on the side there, again, you can just sort of cut those just sort of here and there. Okay, so you're just going to make that. Just going to cut that. Now, you will continue with another number 8, all right? So you're going to continue with another number 8 one, and then you'll continue with a number 9. Now, if you're doing air drying clay, you go straight on to do the next step, all right, which you've dealt with before, because air drying clay obviously will shrink about 8 to 10%. So if you're doing air drying clay, so once you've made the 2 number 8s, the 1 number 9, you repeat the process and make another number 8, another number 8, and the 9 with the end back part, which I'm going to show you. And if you're doing sugar, if you're going to be doing sugar, you can obviously make these before you start on the tulip leaves, all right? Put them in your food dehydrator, and then when you get to this stage, you'll be ready to go on. But they want to sort of dry a little bit, all right? And so this makes it easier to get them together. Now then, when you do the back of this, we're going to then just do exactly the same technique. So remember, I start off, put this into here, and then press it in firmly. So that sort of takes, so you get it close to the sort of the edge of the mold. And then again, just use a sawing action. Now, of course, some of you might be working with air drying clay for this project. Some of you might be working with sugar. Some of you might be doing some with one and some with the other, because, you know, like we dealt with, obviously, the air drying clay with the colors of autumn. You know, when you're doing like the dahlia, it's going to not be as fragile in air drying clay. It's not as heavy either. So that's it. Of course, things like the ribbon, the tulip leaf bows, they're going to be lighter in air drying clay than they will be in paste. So then once you've got to this stage, we're going to then put some glue onto this. Remember, with air drying clay, be quite liberal with that. You almost want to brush onto the edge of the mold. And as soon as you finish with it, obviously wash this and put it in a dishwasher, or just put a little bit of soap in there. Just give it a little scrub. That will also get rid of the glue that's on there as well. And then you take the second half. So this is one that I've pre-made. So you're just going to line that up. And of course, then you can press this in. I've had this in the food dehydrator for about 2 hours, and I can press nice and firmly with that. And then you're just going to flex that. And this will just come out of the mold. And then of course you can just use your, just around the bottom there. Just cut that around the base, like so. You can get that nice even effect there for the spruce. Okay. So here we have the components of the foliage part that's going to go into our Christmas sparkle arrangement. So we started off with obviously making the 2 tulip leaves. Remember, if you are doing your spruce in sugar, all right, what I would recommend probably that before you start on the tulip leaf, go ahead and make the 3 halves of the spruce, so they will be dry. Pop them in your food dehydrator. But then we moved on to make the tulip leaves, then the 2 loops, which we're going to make a bow. Then we went on to the boxwood. So we have 24 large boxwood, 12 small boxwood leaves. And then we finished off by making the spruce. But if you're doing air drying clay, of course, you can do both parts of this. You have to do both parts of this at the same time. So these are the first part of the foliage. And in part 2, I'm going to be showing you the finishing touches to these. So I hope you've enjoyed this first part of the tulip leaf bows, the English boxwood, and also the spruce. And look forward to seeing you in the second part where we're going to finish this off. Sweet wishes, see you soon, bye.